All right, we're in the second. Oh, let me rephrase that. The third game in our 25th anniversary of Sonic retrospective, and this time we're going into Sonic 2. And because this is the game that introduced Tails, and because playing as Sonic and Tails, sort of gets Tails in the way, we're just going to let Tails run the show by himself. Now, I understand this does cause some problems Chaos Emerald-wise. Ordinarily, you could get Supersonic after you went through enough special stages and picked up enough Chaos Emeralds. So we're going to be doing things a little bit harder, I guess, and sticking with Tails. Tails is famous for his two tails in the back, allowing him to fly, although his name is Miles per hour, technically. And we're going to be with him again for the next 8 stages. And as we start off in Emerald Hill, which is sort of a knockoff of Green Hill, you'll notice a couple things about this game right away. First off, it is a lot faster than Sonic 1. And there's a lot more momentum stuff. We got through the first act in 1 minute and 3 seconds, and it really didn't feel like we'd done all that much. Another thing I can tell you is that the special stages are activated differently. So no more do we get the big rings at the end of levels. Now, if we have 50 rings and we can get to a checkpoint post, we can jump through a little blinky light things in order to get to special stages. But, we are just zooming right now in ways that we were not zooming in most of the levels of Sonic 1. And part of this had to do with a split in the Sonic development team. After Sonic 1, the Sega of America development team started working on what became Sonic 2, including this little dealie, the Spin Dash, which I had kind of forgotten I had until that moment. And they created this faster, more streamlined Sonic game. Where now each of the worlds had only a couple of stages. This is an example of the special stage arenas. They're in these half pipes. Now, I have the same sort of slippery control issues that I did in at times during the Sonic playthrough, so I honestly don't think we're going to end up getting all the Chaos Emeralds. And we didn't even get through the first stage of this special stage. But again, that's not really the point of this. Maybe when we get to Sonic 3, if we get to Sonic 3, we can deal with that kind of stuff then. And now I've run into the boss phase. So instead of having 3 stages per level and sort of getting used to seeing a lot of the same things over and over again, which we talked about a little bit in Sonic the Hedgehog 1, you only have 2 acts per stage here, or 2 acts per zone, and the boss is at the end of the second act. And as you can see, he didn't cause us much trouble at all, and then we're still releasing the same animals from the same looking canisters, kind of like we did after the first, in the first Sonic. Yep, and there's some Tails idle animation. Tails, usually in the Sonic universe, he's a younger character. He's more intelligent than Sonic in the fact that he's book smart. Obviously, Sonic is an ultimate street smart kind of character. Although Sonic's roots originally had him also as a early version of a tech head. But because of his youth, because he's not Sonic the Hedgehog, Tails usually runs into storylines involving, gaining confidence or something of that nature. Because he could do just about everything that Sonic was able to do in Sonic 2, and he could visit the same levels in Sonic 3 without any problems. That seems sort of a step backwards when you got to Sonic Adventure, and all of a sudden they emphasize that storyline. But I do like the fact that it did give Tails some personality separate from Sonic's. Now you'll note here that we are moving. That in Chemical Plant Zone we got to some places where we were able to move and force the screen to move with us. There was a speed cap in Sonic 1. I don't know if we ever hit it personally, but they removed that speed cap when they got to Sonic 2. And you could see that as we kept accelerating at certain points in Chemical Plant Zone Level 1. So now we're in the second act of Chemical Plant Zone, and this is historically where I would get stuck on the handheld version of this, just because I wasn't quite familiar with the level layout. My history with Sonic 2 dates back further than it does with any other Sonic game. My first exposure to Sonic 2 was at a friend's house on a sleepover where he played Sonic, I played Tails, and we managed to get all the way to Wing Fortress Zone over the course of the sleepover. And other than maybe that's pretty much my entire experience with Sonic 2 was one night. But it also makes it the classic Sonic game that I have the most familiarity with, which is kind of weird. If you ask Sonic fans about Sonic 2's place in the world of Sonic games, it sits pretty high normally. There are some people who believe it is the best. There are other people who believe that it is surpassed by Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and but it gets very subjective eventually when you start looking at those lists of favorites. So here we are bouncing around. You'll notice, other than going through the loop-de-loops and speed sections and all that stuff, you'll notice the purple liquid. That purple liquid is called Megamac, and yes, if you stay in it long enough, like water, you can drown. And Eggman will try to kill you with it in the boss battle later. You'll notice either rings are more plentiful, or I'm just doing a better job of running into them. I don't think we ever had 100 rings running around in Sonic 1. We already have 94 here. You can see another gimmick of Chemical Plant Zone, which is the little platforms that kind of rotate around, and you can only stand on them when they're working with you. And I was kind of concerned here that when I missed that jump, that I had flown in, or I was going to fall into a bottomless pit. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and we get to the boss act, or the boss area. So now, Dr. Robotnik is going to try to kill us with this very same Megamac we've been jumping up and down from. Embarrassingly, the first time I got to this boss section, I accidentally stopped moving on one of the moving platforms and fell into the Megamac and died before the boss even showed up. And you need to be careful after you beat the boss, because those panels continue to rotate. They don't stop once Dr. Robotnik is gone. They keep going, and so you have to avoid them in order to get to the animals and officially end the level. And then, because every zone, again, only has 2 acts, we can go ahead and move to the third zone in this episode. This is Aquatic Ruin Zone. The name brings back memories of Marble Zone, but it's not really designed like Marble Zone at all. Remember, Marble Zone had us trekking around lava and moving platforms and floating objects and all kinds of those things. And I'm going to get real tired of these digging enemies by the time we get out of this thing. Aquatic Ruin Zone has water, and it has much more water in the second in the second act than it does in the first. But for the most part, the water is avoidable. In fact, it's recommended that you do avoid it, particularly in Act 2, because the game seems to move very quickly, and you can tell I'm getting hit by enemy placement a lot here. But in Act 2, you're going to hear the drowning music a lot if you're not careful. If you end up in the water and you're not careful about how you manage that. Your best bet is to stay out of the water as much as possible. And try to show you how to do that here. New thing, you got statues shooting arrows at you. Yeah, that doesn't ever get annoying. So if you follow these little platforms all the way across, you can avoid the water completely. But if you at least land where I did here, you'll be at the mid-tier where the water level is not high, and you can easily jump out to get air. So you defeat a few chompers. And then there's another enemy that sort of follows you around. I'm not sure what they're called. They're small, they look a little bit like flies. And I don't know if you can hit them or if you just have to avoid them, but yeah. Another issue with the Aquatic Ruin Zone, the vegetation. Kind of blocks your view, doesn't necessarily tell you everything you want to know. And there are columns that fall down a lot, so we got an air bubble there, so we should be fine to keep going. Now, one thing I found is that when those pillars hit you, they don't kill you. But they do cause the floor to glitch out, so you'll actually fall through the floor. Which is just sort of weird. And now we are in the boss section of the final part of the act here. Now here, Dr. Robotnik in his infinite wisdom is going to hit arrows out of the mouths of one statue and into the other. And then you use the arrow as a platform to hit him. And you'll notice the statues are getting smaller and smaller as Dr. Robotnik hits them. Generally speaking, you shouldn't have to worry too much about avoiding the arrows if you're careful. You're going to see me not be careful pretty quick here. But I'm taking this pretty patiently. There you go. And that's where I got hit. Now eventually I imagined that Dr. Robotnik would get low enough that you could just jump up and hit him, but I don't actually do that here. But yeah, that gets us through the third zone. You know, if this was Sonic 1, you would think that the game was almost half over. But we got a little ways to go here, including our next visit to the casinos. Got to play some slots. So I'll see you then.